You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the bosses crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
we will not raw dog reality for that one.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
The Scab Buster.
What have we become?
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Hello, and welcome to the Labor Joint Podcast, where we discuss, examine, talk about, peer through, wonder about, wander through, and mosey around. Oh shit, what do we do? The working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Sam James. What do I do?
I don't know, but I'm your co-host. And apparently you've eaten a thesaurus recently.
I think you're going to say like an edible or something, which is the same.
And I guess my name's Gabe.
Oh, and I'm joined today by...
Gabe Christie.
There's two of you.
Yeah.
How
There
is this
isn't.
possible?
Through the power of modern technology.
And today, we are going to learn about...
Gonna finally talk about the Knights of Labor.
the Knights of Labor. I like this. King Arthur, Camelot. I love it.
Yep, that's it. That's how it worked. There was a sword in a stone somewhere in Philly, and they needed a mason to break the stone to get the sword out.
But they were all on strike.
Yeah, and that's why they had the Knights of Labor,
Oh.
and that's the whole story. So
Wow.
episode done.
Oh.
Yep.
Play us out, Sam.
Yep.
Play us in, Gabe. I know there's more. And my mouth is watering for some saucy knights.
Ooh. I'm not sure how I should feel about that one, but anyway, we're just going to keep moving forward.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned them a couple of times. They were a fairly important part of the 19th century labor movement, and had probably an outsized impact on future labor organizations compared to what they actually achieved while they were in existence.
Okay.
But before we can get into them, as always,
We need a little background.
yeah, it's almost like I'm getting predictable. There were a couple of labor organizations that had popped up before them in Philly that we've already talked about, like the Philadelphia Working Man's Party, and the Mechanics Union of Trade Associations, which kind of existed concurrently in the 1820s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And they were both attempts to create this like broad working class coalition to resist the oncoming capitalism that was developing in the city at the time.
Are you going to tell them, or do I have to tell them? It did not work out.
Yeah, it was not super successful. But after those organizations collapsed, there were a lot of other like trades and craft unionist movements that would pop up, and you'd still see some labor action throughout the 1830s and 40s and 50s. But there wasn't an overall class-based organization agitating for it.
I feel like they gave up on trying to get everybody in it together at the same time. They couldn't get everybody through the door at the same time, so they're like, all right, carpenters, you go. Carpenters, you go. All right, and now the masons, you go.
Yeah, it's at least from my understanding of it, it's a combination of like, it's hard to get all of these disparate groups of people to actually coordinate together, to the way capitalism was developing in North America was really, really fast paced. So you had to be able to outpace that. And it's really difficult when because the capitalists were coming in with all of this money from banks and like massive loans from the federal government to go do whatever they wanted. whereas the people trying to organize against them were coming in with like, I have a potato and a shoe and I just arrived off the boat.
Who won that fight, Gabe?
Surprisingly not the potatoes and shoes.
Ah, man. I was rooting for the potato guys.
Yeah.
And also, Irish Americans?
Yes.
Okay, just want to say.
Though they're not the same. The first potato farm in Europe was in Germany. So, anyway, we're not going to get into that. Could have gone a very bad direction. So there were some, or like we mentioned, I think in episode 15.
I thought you were about to say 50, and I was about to believe you. I was
Yep.
like, it feels like 50.
Yeah, fool. So as we discussed in episode 15, there were some cooperative movements, and they kept setting up worker cooperatives or consumer cooperatives and other types. We won't
Yes.
go back into the types of cooperatives.
If we record that a fourth time, you're going to have to talk to my therapist.
Yeah. So there were a couple attempts to like switch over to cooperativism rather than capitalism, which had limited success.
Sounds nicer, though.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, there were some cool experiments. So after the war, there were some other movements that popped up to try and kind of
Which war? Civil War?
yes,
Okay.
after the Civil War.
Civil War.
There were a lot of 19th century wars. After 1865, when the Civil War ended, the National Labor Union was founded in New York City, which was a nationwide coalition of craft unions.
The NALU?
The NALU, which was sort of a predecessor to the American Federation of Labor, the AFL.
Okay.
So they wanted each trade to advocate for itself, and then on certain issues they would all come together.
Okay.
So rather than an industrial approach where everyone just worked together.
Yeah.
Then in 1869, a fellow in Philadelphia named Uriah Stevens.
Ooh.
It's a very 19th century name.
I love that name.
Stepped onto the scene. Or I guess actually he didn't, but we'll get into why.
That guy does not step. That man saunters.
Well, see, the thing is, he doesn't, he's not even on the scene. And we'll get into it.
Oh, okay.
It'll make sense.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Stevens came from a middle class background, actually growing up in New Jersey.
But we won't hold that against him.
No. Because he eventually made the choice to live in Philly. So he redeemed himself.
Yeah.
But after...
Well, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then we all make worse mistakes.
Yeah. After the Panic of 1837, his family was pretty destitute. Because he was originally supposed to be trained as, I think, a Baptist minister.
Oh. Okay.
And then the Panic of 1837 hit, and his family had no money, so he took an apprentice. He became an apprentice tailor. Stevens went to California through the West Indies and Central America and Mexico. Then he came back to Philly in the 1850s.
By going through the Antarctic.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They gave this really thorough account of how he gets to California, and then they're just like, oh, and then he showed back up in Philly somehow.
And this is 1840. It took him probably 37 years to get there.
Yeah. That was a bad idea.
You ate popcorn too soon. I was ending my bit.
Yep.
You have to eat when I start my bit, so that
True.
it gives you a chance to chew.
Yep.
So we're just going to sit here in silence, and the listener is going to have to suffer because of your negligence.
I believe...
You have a dictionary around here that I can look up how to say that word? I knew you were going to pick up the Yiddish, the modern English Yiddish English dictionary.
Yep.
Gabe, do you have about an hour and a half for me just to browse through this and just...
You can keep yourself entertained. I'll just keep talking.
Are these words upside down? Or is that just
No.
Yiddish?
That's just how Yiddish works. It's written right
It makes
to
a
left.
lot of sense, Gabe.
Yep.
No wonder your people were always traveling. They didn't know they couldn't read the fucking maps.
It's true.
So I can tell those kind of jokes now, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
So you gave me the Jew card.
I did. It's official. Uriah Stevens, back in Philadelphia in the 1850s,
Yeah,
somehow.
after 37 years. Okay.
Yeah. Weirdly, he wasn't Jewish, so I don't know why he got lost. So he kept... he continued his work as a tailor in dealing with all of the poor conditions and low wages of mid-19th century tailoring, which was starting to get kind of pushed out by more industrialized factory work. Mm-hmm. So you weren't seeing as many small shop tailors anymore. Obviously, that became more of an issue later on, but it had begun.
Things are not looking up for this guy.
Yeah. So then he did become very active in the antebellum reform movements. Then he later became involved in the utopian socialist movement, which is sort of related to, but not as directly, it's similar to the Ricardian socialism, but utopian socialism was like a less economically based and more based on like, we can create a perfect society, and if we think the right thoughts, then people will just kind of follow us. And then
They were the
happen.
hippies of the socialism movement.
Kinda,
Okay.
yeah. Actually, that's probably a good way of explaining it. It's like if you take 19th century romanticism and then apply that to socialism,
Yeah.
and that's where they come.
It's a nice
from.
idea.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna fucking work.
No.
Sorry.
So
Remember that scene in Mars Attack when the hippie lady releases the dove and the
Yeah.
alien just shoots it out of the sky? That's my attitude towards
Yeah.
hippies. I like the idea. I love it. It's not gonna work.
Yep.
If a guy comes at you with a laser gun,
Yeah.
you need a laser gun, don't you?
It's fair. In 1862, so actually during the Civil War, which was surprising because I haven't found a lot of other organizing activity that actually happened in wartime, he organized the Garment Cutters Association of Philadelphia, or the GCAP.
Gap.
And so it was a craft union, and at least from what I've been able to find, was Stevens's first introduction to organizing.
Okay.
So that lasted for 7 years until 1869, and then the association basically fell apart. But Stevens wasn't done, and he and a few other fellow garment cutters got together and created the Noble and Holy Order of the Knights of Labor, which is a great name.
Oh, what? Were they like sacrificing people?
No.
That is a very scary name.
Yes. So they...
You sure this guy's not Catholic?
It might be. Well, so actually the Catholics really didn't like them. Basically...
Because they're cutting in on their action.
Yeah. Basically, they designed it as a utopian socialist fraternal organization, and drew a lot of their inspiration from the Masons and like a bunch of other secret societies.
Okay. So they were like socialists with member-only jackets.
Yeah, but we're also like super secretive. So they didn't like the Knights of the organization wasn't talked about in public.
I'm getting like hard Mason vibes from this. Freemason vibes.
Yes. They were kind of weird.
How many Dan Brown books have been written about this organization?
Surprisingly not. Which,
How many movies starring Nicolas Cage have we seen of this movie?
honestly, there should be a Dan Brown novel about the Knights of Labor, because not only did they draw a lot of their imagery from the Masons, but they also added a lot of their own, like, specific trades stuff to it.
Okay.
They were constantly sending messages in code because you weren't allowed to publicly talk about the organization existing until the late 1870s.
I'm getting bad vibes, man.
Yeah. So, where was it? Okay, so they would pass information to each other by writing cryptic messages on, like, sidewalks and walls and fences.
This is a
chalk.
Dan Brown book.
Yeah.
So they're using like cryptexes and stuff.
Sort of. They had a code. And the example that always gets trotted out is you would see 8 equals 415/1, which means on April 15th at 8 o'clock, local assembly number 1 would meet.
Okay.
So that's how they would send messages out to their members to call a meeting. And then the members just had to, 1, know what that code meant, and 2, know where to go for the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
I used to write boobies on a calculator.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, basically. But their long-term goal was to unite all productive members of society, which yeah,
I don't know about that.
so it was a broad approach. They identified them as basically any wage earners except for bankers, lawyers, stockbrokers, gamblers, doctors, and liquor manufacturers and salespeople.
All right. Well, I'm kind of half in for this.
Yeah.
Half in. I'm kind of.
It's so they.
I mean, do you know what they call 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, forget where I was listening to it, but there was one theory that the rise of, like, insane litigation basically came about because they started outlawing duels. And so wealthy people still needed a way to screw with each other that didn't involve shooting each other. And then well, I'm going to sue you because you you made my dog angry.
Oh, can we please go back to duels?
It would solve a lot of problems.
I would love to see Jeff Bezos in a pistol duel
Yes.
with who?
I mean, just to get the class conflict going.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He's going.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Yes. That would be more entertaining than watching the two of them launch phalluses into space. So, and would be much better for the environment.
Oh, most definitely.
So,
because their dead bodies can fertilize
exactly.
soil.
And if they do a sword duel, then they're not even producing any smoke. So,
Interesting.
even more ecological. So the Knights of Labor had this kind of weird, broad approach. And you'd have, like, small scale merchants and retailers technically working in the same union as like industrial factory workers.
Okay.
Which there were some class conflicts that they didn't necessarily agree on.
I remember on a recent podcast you describing these people as petty bourgeoisie.
Yes.
So I can see that maybe they wouldn't get along perfectly too well.
Yes. And so that also led into, there was kind of a reluctance to support, or within the Knights of Labor, to support strikes or broader labor actions, because that would exacerbate the differing class interests among their membership.
Oh my god.
So, yeah. But,
between that and the boobies on the calculator, I can't just make heads or tails of these guys. I'm all over the place here.
But, so, and the really weird thing about the Knights of Labor to me, especially early on, was they were specifically they wanted basically to have a peaceful revolution, at least from what I can tell.
Okay.
Because they were distinctly anti-capitalist. They wanted to end the capitalist system. They wanted to advocate for better wages and for more workers' rights. And very specifically an end to child labor. But stopped them, or they kept stopping short of taking that next radical step of doing all of that through aggressive and militant labor action.
Through stuff that actually will work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
they sound good on paper, though.
Yeah. Reading descriptions of them, a lot of it struck me as if you took all of the ideas of the Wobblies and then removed all the militancy.
Okay.
And that's kind of what you would end up with.
Huh.
Like I said, they basically had that utopian socialist idea of if we start creating this better society, then the rest of the working class is just going to come join us.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to stop working in capitalism because no one actually likes capitalism. And then we'll just have this new society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And it'll go smoothly.
Yes. Sometimes at night I also dream.
Yeah. Also, I realized I should have mentioned there was a reason for all of their secrecy. Because it wasn't just to be I want to be cool. And,
That's what it does. It sounds exactly like that.
Yeah.
The little clubby that they got.
Yeah.
Like the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Yeah. So before the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, it was totally legal for your boss to fire you for being in a union.
Mm-hmm.
And
not technically, but it kind of still is.
Yeah.
Oh, you were late that one time 7.5 years ago.
So it was actually not a bad idea to keep the organization totally secret.
Sure.
Because it was we were technically building a revolutionary movement, even though it was illegal, not quite revolutionary. Yeah.
They didn't need all the handshakes and all the signs. Maybe. I think they got a little too much. They had a little too much fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I think that was also kind of a propaganda tool, because
to bring people in or to scare people away.
Bring people in, because then it
seems more.
There's some intrigue,
more exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it should also. A lot of the secret societies that exist or existed and still exist are kind of bougie and are a little bit more elite. So this was the working man's secret society.
Yeah.
Which I can get that. But,
and I think at this time in American history, there was a lot of people walking around in white robes. So the ones walking around in black robes were they were sexy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were kind of against the grain.
Yeah. So I think both the secrecy did make some sense. But it still seems a little bit weird. It's also hard to really publicly advocate for stuff if you can't share the fact that you exist. But despite all of their secrecy and all of the barriers that existed to organizing at the time, they actually continued to expand. And so between 1869 and 1877, they expanded out of Philadelphia and spread pretty, I wouldn't say nationwide yet, but they had a very strong concentration in like the mid-Atlantic states and going up to like probably Ohio-ish, basically fought with railroads.
Okay.
Because they became very popular with rail workers. And especially after the National Labor Union that I had mentioned collapsed in 1873.
Ah, okay. So they took kind of the stragglers from that?
Yeah. And so so they kind of took over the stragglers from that, and then the Long Depression that started in 1873 also helped feed into their popularity.
Okay. Well, things are going kind of good for these guys.
Yeah. And they, I guess, should also mention that they're, especially early on in this period, it was a very decentralized organization. Like at this point, they still hadn't had a national conference. So they had this like big secret organization, but all of the individual branches of it were operating pretty independently.
Oh, really?
Which that also,
yeah, maybe that keeps it. I don't know. Maybe that keeps it more secret.
Yeah,
you know,
it made it more secretive, but then you also had the issue of if you're trying to build a movement that's going to overthrow an economic system,
yeah,
you need coordination.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it is that not having a centralized body controlling everything, especially with the Knights of Labor, meant that individual associations some of the individual associations tended to get more militant.
Yeah.
So, because you'd have ones that were like mostly industrial workers, so they would start striking.
Yeah.
Because the Knights offered them this organizational framework, and then even if technically the overall body wasn't really supportive of strikes,
yeah,
but once you get workers organized, they're going to do the sensible thing.
I feel like the game kind of like the blueprint, and then they kind of did their own thing.
Yeah,
I think it's also harder to kill if you're not like a unified body, everybody in together. Like you're in cells, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you kill one cell, you still got all these other ones there that aren't really connected.
Yeah, so there wasn't a huge amount of information on public perception of the Knights of Labor before they went public. But they seemed to be pretty popular among the working class. And the movement was in the tens of thousands by 1877, which was the Great Railroad Strike, which was one of their first major, or I don't want to call it a major action by the Knights of Labor, because it wasn't necessarily like directly organized by them, but it was a strike enacted by members of the Knights of Labor.
It was Knights of Labor adjacent.
Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of where it can get confusing, whereas like they organized with the Knights, but this wasn't necessarily a sanctioned action, but the only reason it happened was because of the Knights. And it's like, yeah. Anyway, we'll get probably a little bit more into that in part 2 of this episode.
No.
So stay tuned. We ain't done.
I can't wait for part 2, because for part 1, I've never thought that within a span of a half hour, I would reference the Ku Klux Klan, the Little Rascals, and 90s cult classic Mars Attacks.
Well, that's just the great content that you get here at Labor Jawn.
Okay.
So,
Knights of Labor Part 2.
yes.
Pod 2. The Reckoning.
The relaboring.
The Knights of Labor strike back.
Yes. I mean, they did. Actually, they did, because we start with the Great Railroad Strike of 1877.
Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah.
Don't
It's
dissect my jokes.
So we talked about it a little bit in the Reading Railroad Massacre episode.
Our most joyful episode.
Yep, it's really
A holiday
cheery.
classic.
Yeah. Conditions after the Long Depression during the Long Depression of 1873 were really bad. And then in June of 1877, I think, strike broke out in West Virginia.
Mountain Mama.
Mm-hmm.
Take me home, Gabe.
I'm not a mountain road.
We're just going to stare at each other for a while. I won't forgive you for how you started this episode. I'm not going to give you any material to work with.
That's fair.
I can ad-lib bullshit for a half hour. Can you ad-lib history for a half hour?
But you don't ad-lib history. I wrote it down. Ad-libbing
That's a
history
good lie. I don't ad-lib history. That's pretty... Let's go on your tombstone, Gabe. Tomorrow, if you keep talking about cooperatives.
So, like I mentioned a little bit in the last episode, it wasn't necessarily like centrally coordinated by the Knights of Labor, but it was enacted by members of the Knights of Labor.
Yeah.
And that kind of
unofficially official.
Yeah. So basically, I think you explained it that like the Knights of Labor laid the foundation for everything, and then the workers just took it the rest of the way.
Oh yeah, okay. Wow, you're giving me credit for something.
Yeah, you made a good
I was
point.
flabbergasted for a second.
The Knights of Labor became very, very popular after the railroad strike. And they started to expand and basically went nationwide. But that also ran into the problem of when you're expanding that quickly, you need more of a central body to actually coordinate things.
Yes.
So in Reading, PA, in 1878, they called a national conference, which was actually the first time they elected national official or officers, and that's when they kind of started to reshape into what we today would recognize as more of a union,
Okay.
rather than a secret fraternal organization.
Okay.
I also want to point out, just to keep the Philadelphia focus, since that is technically
Oh yeah.
what we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want, Gabe.
I mean, yeah, it's our podcast.
No, listeners, it is your podcast. So write into liberjohn.com. Actually, we don't have a .com yet. .org? .net. We're going to go .net.
Ooh,
We're going to go
okay.
in late 90s .net. Write into liberjohn.net.
I like it. What was I looking for? Yeah, so...
You're still waiting for the dial-up.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works, by the way. It's just all dial-up.
I mean, I
And like I have a train of
I'm
thought,
right there
and if
with
someone
you.
changes the subject, it's like someone picked up the phone while I was trying to connect to the internet. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I'm just thinking about trains. What
the fuck, Gabe?
You said train of thought. We're talking about
Gabe, are
railroad
you sure you're not
strikes.
on dial-up?
I've been on
Gabe,
dial-up.
are you
for
on a
long
rotary
time.
phone or something?
Yeah, I'm not on dial-up. I'm on a switchboard. So the greater Philly area was still like the epicenter of the whole organization.
Okay.
They had the most local assemblies, and in part that's because Philly was a very working class city. On the other hand, it was a secret organization that was spreading by word of mouth, and it was founded in Philly.
Yeah.
So Philly's going to have the most
Sure.
organizations. Like, that just makes sense. And At this point, they had around 10,000 members in 1877-ish.
Okay.
There weren't super clear records kept, so it's hard to tell.
It's very secretive.
Yes. But at that national conference, they elected their first nationwide officers.
Or they thought they did. No one showed up because they didn't know where they were meeting.
But Uriah Stevens was elected as... what's the title?
Presidente.
As the Grand Master Workman.
All right, we got to stop this. We got to stop it right now. We have to just end this. Are we sure we're not talking about the Ku Klux Klan or the Catholic Church?
Yep.
Or the Masons?
Yeah. No, this is all Knights of Labor.
The He-Man Women's Hated Club? Are we, this is going to be a major labor organization.
Yes. This is like 19th century secret societies. They all just had silly names.
Man.
Yeah.
How did we survive this long? Our species, how did we survive this long?
I don't really know. We do lots of really silly things. But one of those silly things is coming up with the title Grand Master Workman, which I also feel like would be a great, like, labor-themed mid-'80s hip-hop artist.
Oh, that's pretty good. I actually gotta like that.
Well, I think that...
Oh, fuck. Now I'm gonna make a hip-hop song about... about the Grandmaster of Labor.
But in 1879, Stevens actually stepped down as Grand Master Workman. I'm just going to keep saying that title as many times as I can.
Stepped down for the labor.
And was replaced by Terrence V. Powderly, who was a machinist from Carbondale, PA.
You can't just make up your own name.
So Powderly was a socialist, but I've seen it falsely reported that he ran on a socialist ticket. He didn't. He ran on a Greenback Labor Party ticket. And anyway, so he should, but he was a socialist, but he was another utopian socialist, not a Marxist. And weirdly...
Oh, these guys.
Yeah. He didn't like strikes, and thought that they were barbaric and old-fashioned.
These guys are like the hippies.
Yeah, like...
of the socialist movement.
Which, and on the one hand, you'd expect that to be like some sort of effete into, like, you'd expect that attitude from like a champagne socialist. Mm-hmm. I don't really like that term, but whatever.
I think the more modern term is the Reddit socialist or the Discord socialist.
Yes.
The ones you just send memes to each other.
Yeah.
That's how you seize the memes production game. Is you
true.
send memes.
It's Capital Volume 4, Memes as Praxis. Mm-hmm. And it's...
I send memes, but that's just because I have crippling depression.
Yes, and you need that, whatever dopamine you can get.
Yes, that's what it is. I just need a little bit of joy in my life.
Yeah. It's either pets or memes, and those are the only two sources. I would expect his attitude more from, like, an intellectual, but he was a machinist that had, like, come up in the labor movement. So
he should know better?
Yeah, but anyway.
We won't hold it against him.
No.
This guy's been dead for 150 years.
Yeah.
He's fine.
Yeah. And he did more to organize workers than I've ever done, so...
there's
that.
Gabe, don't be casting stones, bud.
Yeah. But basically, he wanted to use the Knights of Labor as an educational organization to teach workers not only how to organize, but also, like, teach them economic theory and cooperativism and all of that.
Imagine a bunch of guys in black robes teach you economic theories.
I don't know where you got this black robes thing.
Like, let me have this.
I never mentioned black robes.
Man. Coming in with a Gregorian chant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that happened at least once, but... so basically he wanted to educate people rather than having a actual militant labor movement.
Okay. Well, it's not terrible.
I mean, educating workers is good.
Yeah.
But
Because those workers can then educate more workers who can educate more workers.
yeah. But then you have to do something with the education.
Eventually, yes.
And that was where part of the problem came in. And
a kink in the chain.
Yeah. We should also point out here, while we're talking about Powderly and while we're talking about Powderly and the Knights of Labor more broadly, they didn't necessarily have the greatest views on certain issues.
Here it comes.
Specifically around immigration. So Powderly and the Knights of Labor, kind of writ large at the time, had the nativist view that immigrant labor suppressed the wages of American workers, and thus they pushed for the West Coast associations of the Knights of Labor to lobby for the Chinese Exclusion Act.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, they're right, but it's not the immigrants' fault.
Yeah.
Which is where the targeting comes in. It's not the immigrants' fault. It's the bosses and the owners of these corporations who know they can pay these immigrants a lower wage.
Yeah. It's also like the solution to that is you go and start working to organize the immigrants.
Yeah. Because they say, hey, they're going to treat you like shit and pay you like shit.
Yeah.
We were getting paid a lot better. You want to get paid like that? Come with us.
And it's interesting because the really militant Jewish labor organizers and the Eastern European Jewish labor organizers at the turn of the 20th century all learned how to organize from the Germans, or from the German immigrants, who all learned how to organize because they were part of Marxist socialist organizations back in Germany.
It seems like there's
and
go ahead.
But you didn't have basically WASP labor organizers teaching immigrants how to organize.
Yeah.
And they kind of taught themselves.
Yeah. It doesn't, there's a common thread where even 150 years later.
Yeah.
They attack the immigrants. They're stealing our jobs and stuff like that. And it just goes straight to racism.
Yeah.
They just have to realize that they're all in it together.
I have much more in common with a Filipino deckhand on a Russian freighter than I do with Jeff Bezos. He and I are closer to each other than I'm ever going to be.
I don't agree with you, Gabe.
No?
I think I have more in common with Jeff Bezos. Because I have the will and the drive to succeed in life.
And to shoot a giant penis into space.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
That's what you're going to do.
Yeah. I need to procreate into the universe, Gabe.
I wonder if, are you familiar with the theory of panspermia?
Gabe?
We've gotten
and
really
so
off topic.
Well, I mean, Secret Society, Jeff Bezos. It's
fair.
not that hard to connect, you know?
Yeah. That's fair. And I mean, Jeff Bezos isn't that different from the railroad barons that they were fighting against.
Mm-hmm.
Who probably were all members of all sorts of horrible secret societies.
Sure.
But
they weren't giving you next day prime shipping like Jeff was.
It's true.
When I order edible panties, I need it there the next day, baby.
I mean, when the mood strikes, you gotta have them.
How about when the Knights of Labor strike, Gabe?
So when they strike,
Gabe, it's bad when I'm trying to get you back on topic.
oh my god, yeah, you were the one that. Anyway, so I've heard some explanations that one of the reasons why the Knights of Labor were so resistant to specifically Chinese and Asian labor is they were basically convinced that Chinese workers just didn't want to organize for some reason.
Okay.
So again, I mean, it was clearly just going back to racism.
But I mean, seriously, if a bunch of white people are coming up to you and say, "Hey, join our secret organization,"
Yeah,
you're just like, "Yeah,
maybe
I'm
not.
game."
Maybe I don't want to do that.
Is that a pentagram on the floor?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think part of the other issue is that there probably weren't like a bunch of railroad workers who were fluent in Cantonese or Mandarin. So there's probably some language barrier
there might be a
issues.
language barrier there.
Like, we keep handing out pamphlets and no one comes to the meetings. I don't know what we're doing wrong.
How do you mime labor movement?
Yeah.
Solidarity. How do you mime that?
I mean, the fist.
It's a crazy secret sex society. I mean, like, that fist can mean so many things, Gabe.
It's true. So
we really got to stop recording your sex dungeon, Gabe, because it's like fucking me up here, man.
So I also want to point out that the Knights of Labor resistance to Asian immigrants was pretty much just based in racism because they were fine with European immigrants.
We could have said that a half hour ago and just skipped all this bullshit that we went through, Gabe.
This bullshit.
Do you have
premium content? It's what the people pay for.
Gabe, we just riffed a half hour off of anti-Asian racism with complete non sequiturs of everything that you said.
Anyway, so
if the next words out of your mouth is Knights of Labor, Asian Americans racism, if it's not that, I will kiss you.
So it's not. We're going to talk about their issues with the Catholic community.
Oh, Gabe, I have a cold, sir. You don't want this one. I'm sorry.
So the Knights of Labor continued to expand and changed into more of a directly working class, labor-focused organization.
Okay.
Which wasn't, like, directed by Powderly, but that's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
Because they started to get more, or a lot of the locals started to get more and more militant, which meant that the shopkeepers and sort of more bougie elements didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yeah, they backed off of that.
But they kept running into the issue that the Pope had banned them, or banned Catholics from joining any such organization.
Okay.
So they removed the Holy and Noble Order from their name and just and stopped all of their secret rituals.
Hey!
So they were now just the Knights of Labor and were just a labor organization. They were no longer holy and noble, or noble and holy.
I didn't think this was going to happen, but I'm kind of like depressed about that.
I mean, I
gave him shit for it, but I mean, it was kind of like loving jabs. I mean, it was kind of like a cute little organization.
I didn't mean to upset you 100 and something years after you stopped existing.
I punched down so far that I punched 6 feet down into the grave.
Then they also, in 1881, allowed women to join for the first time, and they actually recognized housework and domestic work as productive labor necessary for society.
Wow.
Which in 1881 was pretty...
In 2022, that shit is fucking progressive.
Exactly. And they also, in 1879, allowed black membership, which
I'm just, oh my God, what a turnaround with these guys.
So, I mean, while they were still really racist to Asians, they were progressive in other ways.
Yeah.
It's like they could have done better, but I like to take the stance of understanding the historical context that people were working in without letting them off the hook for being shitty.
I see, Gabe.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
But so the Knights of Labor in Philly, to get back to the Philly point here, they were still they remained active throughout this whole period. And now that they were able to operate in the open, they actually established a headquarters on Chestnut Street immediately across from City Hall, or Independence Hall.
Oh, really?
I think it was like 505 Chestnut Street.
Huh.
The original building probably got demolished for Independence National Historic Park. But it's pretty cool that they set it up right there.
Yeah. It's prime real estate.
Yeah. So they organized a few shoemaker strikes. They had
Cobblers.
No. They organized the sympathy strike to support female carpet weavers. And I'm realizing what I just said.
Lesbian Americans, Gabe.
Yes. Then
give me one more for a hat trick.
So they also organized Italian barbers in South Philly. It's harder.
I don't have that. No.
Yeah.
Ah, man. I'm ashamed of myself. I apologize.
That's all right. But so this was like early 1880s. And by this point they had probably around 700,000 members.
700,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they were nationwide. And they were starting to throw their weight around a little bit more, and like,
yeah, I bet they went from 10,000 to 700,000.
Yeah,
that's a bit of an increase
in like 7 years.
Wow.
And I
don't even remember the last 7 years of my life. You know what I mean? That's something.
And they were also very active in the 8-hour day movement that was starting to come back into the milieu at the time. That the 8-hour day like popped up and down throughout the 19th century. Once the 10-hour day got one, then they started advocating for 8 hours.
You give them a mention, they just want a mile.
Yeah. And it took until the 1930s to actually win it.
Oh.
And now we've kind of lost it. No. But I do also want to say, even though they allowed black membership, one of the issues with how decentralized they were is that they allowed locals to manage racial segregation themselves.
Oh.
So you had you'd have racially segregated locals, you had integrated locals, and you had all black locals.
Okay.
And all of these kind of existing at the same time. And you also had like deeply racist locals all in the same organization as these other ones, which I don't know what the mindset of a very racist guy in the U.S. South in the 1870s was, or 1880s.
Sure you don't, Gabe.
But knowing that you're a member of an organization that also had like a fairly strong black membership for the period, I feel like that might create some internal tension for you if you're super racist. But anyway, that just kind of stuck in my mind. Like how did the more racist members of the Knights of Labor justify all of that to themselves. But not that racism is in any way logical.
If you're in an imaginary little world, you can justify any little thing, Gabe.
That's very true. So they expanded up into the mid 1880s and became pretty prominent in the 8-hour day movement. Then in Chicago in 1886,
Okay, Chinatown. Here we go.
the Haymarket Affair.
Oh, never mind. Here we go.
Happened.
Chinatown. Here we go.
Where so there was. It's hard to tell if. And you can probably call it a riot. But regardless, a bomb went off at a speech at during an 8-hour day movement strike. And basically anyone connected to the 8-hour day movement got pinned for it. So that included, and pinned specifically as a dangerous anarchist. So
those anarchists.
yeah, some great examples.
Those
of
rabble rousers.
So some great 19th century red baiting that went on.
I mean, like, why would you bomb your own goddamn protest?
Obviously I'm pretty biased here, but I am somewhat.
That is an understatement, Gabe. Let me tell you that.
I am somewhat of the opinion that it's probably not entirely unfeasible that moneyed interests in the town hired someone to set off a bomb.
What?
But
Gabe, this is breaking news.
I know.
We should get this out to the masses right now. Why aren't you writing thesis papers on this? Why is this going all over the world, Gabe?
I have no evidence of that.
Oh, Gabe,
I
you're
just
full of
think
shit.
it would be feasible.
Gabe, you're full of shit.
So that's what ad-libbing history is.
Bringing
it back.
Man comes around.
All of their red baiting, and the public started to kind of turn against large militant organized labor.
Mm-hmm.
And that combined with all of those internal conflicts that we had mentioned, kind of started to wear away at membership, and locals started to fall apart.
Well, it was nice when I knew you.
Yeah. In addition to that, because the Knights of Labor kind of grew to prominence in the power vacuum left by the National Labor Union, the American Federation of Labor was founded in 1886 and soon rose to prominence.
From the ashes.
Yeah. So they started replacing the industrial union approach with a more craft unionist approach.
Like Pinterest and all that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Then, so Knights of Labor started to die off as the AFL rose.
Mm-hmm. Or they want you to think that.
No. So they did actually continue into the 20th century. And their last local closed disassociated in 1949. So they almost lasted 100 years.
Not too bad.
No. I think there were only like a couple people in the local at that point. So,
or they thought they were. They didn't know. It was like, am I part of this? What's going on?
I don't know. I keep writing weird cryptic messages on the sidewalk, but nobody shows up. So kind of looking back over everything, obviously they never achieved their goals, and they had a lot of very significant problems. But they were the largest and most successful early labor organization in the US. And were still fairly important.
Yeah.
And they I actually think they started to lay the groundwork for later movements like the industrial workers of the world, and other more radical movements, because they kind of showed that it was possible in the US.
Yeah.
And they got it to last a fairly long time.
Yeah. I mean, they planted some seeds.
Yeah. And they also showed a lot. I mean, they showed 700,000 people how to organize. So that's not nothing.
7 years, from 10,000 to 700,000
Yeah.
is something else.
The IWW in the 19aughts and teens, and then getting into like the CIO in the 30s, you saw these similar organizations that followed the same kind of industrial union approach pop up and do some really good work, usually very, very quickly too.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's too bad for a couple of fellas in black coats and black robes and sacrificing guinea pigs and small children to the elder gods.
it's true.
Not too bad.
That's how you win strikes.
It is.
Sacrifices to the ancient gods.
Yeah, of course.
So they're a mixed bag, but overall, I think had probably a positive effect on the labor movement as a whole, if not on race relations in the United States. But then, I mean, the other side is that they also showed that you can build a multiracial working class movement with their integrated locals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
yeah,
got a little be picky,
yeah,
Take it as a whole, but be like, there were some things that are kind of screwed up.
yeah. And not
Such is life.
yeah. Nobody deserves totally unquestioned praise.
Yes. It's who we are, Gabe.
Yeah.
Duality of man.
Hey, this is Gabe, and thanks for listening to the Labor John podcast. So, for now, we live in a system called capitalism. And under this system, you have to exchange currency for goods and or services. And to that end, Sam and I put a lot of time, effort, and a fair chunk of our own money into keeping this podcast available and generally free. And if you'd like to help support us doing that, you can give us some money at patreon.com/LaborJohn. And if you choose to do so, we'll give you a fancy button every year, some cool merch, and an extra episode once a month, whenever possible, because life is hard, because capitalism. Anyway, we'd really appreciate your support if you've got a few bucks to spare. Also, if you happen to be a member of a union, and you want your fellow union members to learn about local labor history, we do commission work, like presentations, pamphlets, that kind of stuff. So if that sounds cool, you can shoot us an email at laborjohn@gmail.com, or contact us through laborjohn.com, or message us on social media, or whatever's most convenient for you. But if that sounds interesting, feel free to reach out. And anyway, thanks for listening. Solidarity. Have fun.